Well, after a very long season, it's all come down to this. The first leg of the 2024-2025 CAF Champions League final to be played in Pretoria between Mamelodi Sundowns and Pyramids FC. We're going to preview the fixture and much more coming up next on the African Five-A-Side podcast. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the African Football Report on the African Five-A-Side podcast. I'm your host, Maher Mezahi, and this is brought to you by africaisaCountry.com. This week on the website, we got a pretty cool article called, it's not a cool article, it's kind of a tragic article, but very educational one called The Other Road to the American Dream. And it's about West African migrants going to the US via Latin America. It's something that you sort of heard of from usually right-wing politicians in the States. You'd hear about like migrants from Congo coming in, they don't understand how and why. And this article sort of covers this in depth and explains the reasons for it and how people do it and how treacherous of a journey it can be as well. So if you're interested in that article, you can find it in the description below. But if you just wanted CAF Champions League final preview, then you've come to the right place. Let's talk about it now. So just a quick note before we start. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very, very sick. I think I have like bronchitis or something. Breathing heavy, coughing loud, and I apologize if this shows up in the audio. But we march on. So what I wanted to do before we start previewing this match is maybe zoom out and think about how we got here, if you're Mamelodi Sundowns or if you're Pyramids FC. Because ultimately, both of these clubs are here because of massive investment from billionaires. But these clubs are not the same. I mean, they have a similar origin, but they're not really the same. Think about Mamelodi Sundowns. They don't solely owe their success to a South African billionaire, the Patrice Motsepe and the Motsepe family. Because he arrives in 2004, and even prior to 2004, Mamelodi Sundowns had PSL, 4 PSL titles, which is the exact same amount as Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates today. Yes, I think Mamelodi Sundowns don't have as many supporters as Orlando Pirates or Kaizer Chiefs, but they're still an authentic club that represents an entire city. The supporters and the club have an identity. You know, they have a nickname, you know, the Brazilians. They have sustained success. And as a result, I don't think we can doubt, like, for me, it's much more of a case of like a Chelsea FC, a club, a legitimate club that had a history in the past before it got investment. And that transformed the club for sure. But they were always an authentic club and they always will be an authentic club. I think there's been a little bit of a debate, and I'd love to know everybody's opinion on if Mamelodi Sundowns' success is a good thing for African or South African football. On one hand, I think kind of like Bayern Munich, they sort of absorb and suck the talent and the resources of, you know, clubs around them. So they might go and poach the best players at Stellenbosch or at Orlando Pirates or at Kaizer Chiefs because obviously they can pay more money and obviously they're competing for more at the moment. And as a result, that kind of lessens the competition, and we can almost argue that it lessens the entire PSL. But at the same time, I think sometimes it's good for a country if you can have one flagship club that can compete on the continent. Obviously, if you can have 2 or 3, that's even better. But if you can have one, first of all, we've seen how good it is for Bafana with that team chemistry. We see how it's been good for South African coaches like Pitso, like Rolani, like Steve Kompella. And I think it could even be argued that, you know, it's good for the image of South African football when you have a club going to competitions like the Club World Cup, winning things like the African Super League, and obviously being competitive in the Champions League. It gives a good image of South African football. It's a good face for South African football. So I think it's an interesting argument to be had. But there's no shadow of it. I mean, obviously, the case is that Mamelodi Sundowns have sort of become almost like a black hole. And Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates are slowly inching their way back. But over the last 8 years, there can be no doubting that Mamelodi Sundowns have sort of sucked up all the energy in South African football. And they've shown. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's an interesting debate that can be had. As for Pyramids FC, for me, the positive out of their investment is that they're sort of breaking up the Egyptian duopoly of Al Ahly and Zamalek, right? This has been the case over the last 3-4 years as Zamalek has been less and less competitive. Now, if I zoom out and I say, you know, if Pyramids FC win the CAF Champions League, does that make the initial investment successful? I was thinking about this a lot, and I don't think I agree with that statement, because if you look at the initial investment into Pyramids FC, it was made to grow influence in Egypt. Because again, Egypt is 120 million people. It's the cultural heart of the Arab world. It's obviously one of the oldest civilizations. So it carries a lot of cachet in the Arab world. And here, the Arab world is part of Africa as well. But here I'm going to try to talk about the Middle East as well and its relevance, because there's Middle Eastern investors. Obviously, there were Saudi investors and Emirati investors. Why would they want to invest in Egyptian football? You have to think, right? It's one of the same reasons why they want Mohamed Salah to go play in the Saudi league. It's, if you bring him, you have the Egyptian market. The Egyptian market is so many people, it's so much influence, it's authenticity. And so initially, the investors wanted to invest in Al Ahli, and then that didn't work out. And then they bought I don't want to say no name club to be disrespectful to the history of Al Asyuti, but pretty much. And they thought that maybe if we can build a team there, we can have success. And if we have success, then we can have influence in Egyptian football. Now, they would undoubtedly have had success. Obviously, they're in the CAF Champions League final. That's the first thing that we have to concede. But has that translated to influence for Arab investors, Middle Eastern investors? I wouldn't necessarily say so, because there are no supporters. Yes, some of the influence comes from winning things, but the other influence comes from being a popular club. And Pyramids FC are quite obviously not a popular club. And as a result, because this is very top down and it's not a grassroots club, with authentic popular support, I can be very doubtful about the long-term future of the club. I mean, with no base, nothing is guaranteed. Sometimes I think there's a very real chance that this club doesn't even exist in 20 years. It's not likely, but it's possible. There's a 99.9% chance that clubs like Wydad, Esperance, Al Ahli will exist in 20 years. I mean, unless there's Armageddon, unless, the world as we know it ceases to exist, then those clubs will still exist, because the supporters, the nation, they'll do anything they can to preserve those clubs because it means so much to so many people. That's not necessarily the case for Pyramids FC. It's top down versus organic. And then the final thing, and this is one of the reasons why I kind of don't hope that Pyramids FC wins this tournament. I'm not supporting anybody, but we've never really had an artificial club win the CAF Champions League. We've had clubs that have lost influence and that are no longer major players on the African continent, like Hearts of Oak in Ghana, Oryx Douala in Cameroon. You can even throw in MC Oran from Algeria. But those clubs were always authentic clubs. Yes, they had golden eras in the past and they sort of fell off, but it was never due to a bunch of money being pumped in from the outside. And so this would feel, in my opinion, a little bit weird, in my opinion. Strictly a personal opinion, but this is what I think. So when we zoom out, I guess I kind of think about, what was the objective for Mamelodi Sundowns when the investment came in? What was the objective for Pyramids? I think the Sundowns project is a healthier one. But even then, I think there can be criticism and real debate within South Africa to sort of say, is this a good thing for South African football to have one club dominate? And obviously, like I said, this year things are a little bit different, as Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates have had some measure of success. So let's talk about the form of these two clubs. First of all, Sundowns are in a celebratory mood after winning their 8th straight PSL title. Congratulations to Mamelodi Sundowns and everybody at the club. I actually have a friend, a British friend, who's works for The Athletic, who's currently down there doing a long write-up, and I think even doing some podcasts profiling the club. And he sort of talked about the mood being, very celebratory, a little bit of partying going on. I don't really like that when you have the biggest match since 2016 on the horizon. But since Mamelodi Sundowns drew with Al Ahli in Cairo and qualified to the CAF Champions League final, they've put together a string of 6 victories. All have either been 3-0 or 2-0. They haven't conceded a single goal in those 6 matches, scoring 3-2 and 3-2 and 3-2. I mean, that's really, really good. So even though, everybody's happy and other teams are, I think it was Magesi that was doing, what do you call that? Like not a ring of honor, but when you line up on both sides of the pitch and you have the team go out and you say, congratulations, you're champions, you know. Um, so even though you have all of that going on, Mamelodi Sundowns are still putting in good results. And so that's the positive thing here. As for Pyramids, remember they were leading in the Egyptian Premier League going into the semifinals of the CAF Champions League. Obviously, they beat Orlando Pirates 3-2 at home. But since they qualified to the CAF Champions League final, they lost 2 matches to Farco and to National Bank at the beginning of May. And now they are no longer leaders of the Egyptian Premier League. They're now chasing Al Ahly. And it was very rare for them to lose this season. I think leading up to that match, they had only lost 3 matches all season. And then leading up to that spell. And now since the CAF Champions League semifinal, they've lost 2 matches in addition to those 3 at the beginning of the season. Their only hope now is that Al Ahly is going to trip up versus Farco in the final match day, and they win their final match. But it seems like they are now currently focusing on the CAF Champions League and not so much on the Egyptian Premier League. So in the last 6 matches, they've conceded 10 goals. Again, Sundowns in the last 6 matches have conceded 0. Pyramids have conceded 10. So that scares me a little bit for Pyramids FC. And it's not even like they're dealing with injuries along the back line or along with the goalkeeper. So let's talk about probable lineups. I think Sundowns are going to play in their trusted 4-3-3. Over the last 6 matches, as they've wrapped up the league, they've sort of rotated a little bit. They've brought in players like Neo Maema, who's obviously, it's not like he's a bench player or something like that. Maseko has played some serious minutes. Arthur Salas has played some serious minutes. But in my opinion, this is how I want them to line up. I want obviously Ronwen Williams in goal. Anyango has had some minutes recently, but Williams is the uncontested starter in goal. Kuliso Mudau on the right. I would start with Aubrey Modiba on the left. You're playing at home. I think it's better to have more attacking fullback than Divine Lundu. In the center of defense, I would have Grant Kakana, and I would also have Mosa Lebusa. Mvala has been back since the semifinal, and he obviously has a lot of experience. But I would prefer the informed player at the moment, Lebusa. And when you haven't conceded goals in the last 6 matches, I think it'd be tough to bench a player that was performing like that. In defensive midfield, or in midfield in general, I would go with that same midfield that's been winning you matches in Africa. Mokoena, Allende, and Jaden Adams. Lucas Ribeiro on the right side of the 4-3-3. Now, who your striker is going to be and who is going to be playing on the left wing, in my opinion, is going to be very interesting. I would say the trend in the league in recent matches has been to play Arthur Salas on the left wing. And of course, he comes into midfield and drops in behind the striker. And probably Ikram Reyners is the more informed striker at the moment. But Peter Shalalili, overall in the CAF Champions League, has been the more informed striker. And usually they played with Tashreeq Matthews, but in my opinion, he hasn't put in a single performance to justify him starting on the left wing, over Salas. Or if Temba Zwane is fit, maybe it's time to finally give him his first start since his return from that horrible injury he suffered last year. He's been playing, I think, in practically every single match, coming off the bench. Obviously, he's had to build his fitness up. I would like to have him start the match because his experience and then his ingenuity, he's the one that really created that equalizing goal in Cairo against Al Ahly with just a moment of thinking outside of the box. So I would really like to see Temba Zwane start the match, and then I would probably have Reyners as a striker. So Zwane, Reyners, Lucas Ribeiro, Adams, Mokoena, Allende in midfield, Modiba, Lebusa, Kakana, Mudau, and then Ronwen Williams in goal. Now, the one thing I would say, if we're talking about now tactics or game plan, whoever starts on the left wing, whether that is Temba Zwane or Tashreeq Matthews or Arthur Salas, they're going to have to help because almost every single one of Pyramid FC's chances in the last few matches of the CAF Champions League have come via their right back. It's a Moroccan fullback. His name is Mohamed Shibi. And he killed Orlando Pirates because he was putting in these beautiful balls, and Fiston Mayele would pretty much bully the Orlando Pirates center half. So whoever's the left winger has to be completely aware that he needs to keep an eye on the right fullback, because if he has just a a second or two on the ball and he has time to get his head up, he's going to put it pinpoint crosses. I'm exaggerating a little bit over here, but think Trent Alexander-Arnold. Think players like that, James Ward-Prowse, players like that. Lucas Ribeiro has a chance to finish a historic season on a high, perhaps before leaving Mamelodi Sundowns, who knows. He's obviously been the best player in the PSL. I was a little bit disappointed with his performances in the CAF Champions League. However, in that match again in Cairo against Al Ahly, I thought he was maybe Sundowns' best player. He was hurting Al Ahly so much by picking up the ball with his back towards goal, just in front of the defensive line, and then quickly turning and running at the Al Ahly defense and trying to either shoot or pass. So he's been really, really good. And I think he's the kind of player that can really pose problems to Pyramids FC's defense. Mokoena, Adams, and Allende, when we talk about the midfield, in the first leg against Al Ahly, they were, I would say, outfought in midfield, even though they were playing at home in Pretoria. And they reversed the trend in the second leg in Cairo. I thought in Cairo there was an attitude shift in midfield. The midfield, they have to keep that bite that they had in Cairo, that intensity, the clipping at the heels. Ibrahim Blati Toure, Mohamed Lashin, Walid El Karti is going to be a formidable midfield, but I think it's not going to be necessarily as good as Al Ahly's midfield. So I think this is a chance for Sundowns midfield to once again prove that they're the best in Africa. I think they are. But more than their quality, I just want to make sure that they have that intensity, particularly Jaden Adams, who at times has a lot of quality, but at times has a tendency sometimes to disappear in some matches. So I want to see intensity in duels in particular from the midfield. For Mokoena and Allende, they need to shoot more than they did versus Al Ahly. In the first leg, they were, I thought, completely stifled and didn't get away any long shots, maybe one from Mokoena. In the second leg in Cairo, they got a few. Some of them were forced, but that's fine. Sometimes you have to force it. I would like them to have, 3 or 4 per match, if possible each, but at least 3 or 4 shots from a distance. Ahmed Shanawi, the Pyramids goalkeeper, has been letting in goals from a distance, from 30 yards out. So I think Mokoena and Allende need to get in their shots from a distance. I think there can be, like I said, a little bit of debate between Mvala or Labusa. I think I'll take the latter, the form over the experience. He has to know that Mayele is a handful. And when he was asked about this at Media Day, he said, we're completely aware that this guy is really good. But basically, our job now as a team is to keep Pyramids as far away from our box as possible. Which is a curious statement because you're almost kind of conceding that Mayele, if they get into the box, can beat you, which I guess is fair enough. Yeah, that's transparent enough. That's honest enough. And so he's sort of saying that it's the entire team that has to defend well. I think it's a very mature way of looking at football, but I almost sometimes want him to be like a little bit more like, no, I got this, it's a pride thing, I need to beat him in aerial duels and things like that. So still, I'll start Labusa over Mvala in that sense. And then Kuliso Mudau. Mudau has those matches in his career where he's locked up opposing stars. And I think immediately, I think it was before the AFCON, South Africa were playing against Cote d'Ivoire. And there was Wilfred Zaha with all the hype that he had at the time against Bafana. And Kuliso Mudau completely locked him up. And I think he's going to need to have another one of these performances here against Ibrahim Adil. Ibrahim Adil missed the semifinals versus Orlando Pirates. Very, very, very good winger. You guys have been hearing about him, I'm sure. In my opinion, the best Egyptian player currently playing in Africa. Should be making the move to Europe this summer if he has any decent representation. He can hurt you in so many different ways. Kuliso Mudau is going to have one of those games to shut him down. And I think obviously he has the quality and the experience to do so. And same thing with Ronwin. I think this is legacy-defining performance. We need those over the 2 legs from Ronwin Williams, and I think they will. Finally, the last real, not advice, but the last real thing I would say if you're Miguel Cardozo is play with emotion. I think at times over this CAF Champions League campaign, I've sort of been wary of Sundowns playing with emotion because they racked up those 3 sending offs at the beginning of the year. But here, when I saw the final whistle in Cairo and I saw what it meant to those Sundowns players like Ronwin Williams, Tamba Zwane, Kuliso Mudau, Teboho Mokoena, Peter Shalulile, this generation deserves a CAF Champions League. And I think they have to harness that emotion and play with it, put in a spiritual performance of sorts, because that's something that Pyramids FC doesn't have. They don't have that history of in this competition of the CAF Champions League of nearly making it, nearly making there, nearly making it there. I think if you can harness it, you can play as if you want it more than them, and so play with emotion, but play smart. And so I think this generation deserves the CAF Champions League, and now they have a chance to play for one. Moving on to Pyramids FC. So, I think they're gonna not make too many changes to their lineup. Ahmed Shinawi in goal. Again, he's been struggling as they've conceded 10 goals in 6 matches. Obviously, not the majority were his fault, but some of them were. Mohamed Hamdi as a left back and Mohamed Shibi as the right back. They've been two of the best fullbacks throughout this entire CAF Champions League campaign. So both are very good with crossing the ball. Both are pretty good offensively, although they can be run at defensively. I would probably say Ahmed Sami is definitely going to start as a center half. Ali Gabra, the experienced Egyptian international, has been starting some other matches as a center half, but he's been really struggling in the Egyptian Premier League. I think Mahmoud Murray is going to be the center half partner next to Ahmed Sami. In the double pivot, you have Blati Toure and Mohamed Lashin, as always, throughout the entire CAF Champions League campaign. Then you'd have Ibrahim Adel on the left, Mustafa Fatih on the right. The question is who's going to sit in that number 10 position, or really the third midfielder alongside Toure and Lashin. You have a choice between Walid Al-Karti, Ahmed Atif, or Ramadan Subhi. I think it's going to be Walid Al-Karti. He adds a little bit of physicalness to the position, decent in the air, and he's played in CAF Champions League finals before and even scored in them. So I think it's going to be the Moroccan attacking midfielder. And then, of course, Fiston Mayele in attack. They've been playing Marwan Hamdi at times in the league, and he's scored, so he's in good form. But Fiston Mayele, with the performance that he had in the CAF Champions League semifinal, has to start there. So what are the keys to the match for Pyramids FC? First of all, Ibrahim Adel's return is a big, big boost. Obviously, he missed the semifinals. When he plays, I give Pyramids FC like a 20 to 30% chance increase in winning a match. He's that good. It's rare for a single player to have that kind of effect, especially on a very good team like this, but he's in that kind of form and he has that kind of quality. The Sundowns this year in the CAF Champions League have not conceded a lot of goals, but they've conceded some low crosses, and Ibrahim Adel is very, very good at that. He's very good at dribbling at your fullback, getting past your fullback, and then usually with the outside of his right boot, he can play some low crosses. It's usually to Fiston Mayele, Mustafa Fatih, or an oncoming midfielder trailing. So Adel has a strength that can be considered, I guess, a Sundowns weakness. Fiston Mayele bullied Pirates center halves. I think he's going to have the slight advantage in the air again against Labusa and Kakana. He's going to be absolutely key to Pyramids FC scoring an away goal. But I think more of the thing that's going to be required for him in this match is actually holding up play. Because I'm expecting Sundowns to score on Pyramids. Pyramids are not going to come to Pretoria and play like Esperance Tunis did. They're not going to be that negative. But they're probably going to be most of the time pinned in their own end. When it's time to break, Fiston Mayele is going to be the target man. He has to be able to hold up play, because if he does, Mustafa Fatih is very, very fast on the right wing. He can make those runs into space when the ball is laid off. And Ibrahim Adel, of course, is very dangerous in transition as well. Mohamed Shibi is almost really the final tactical point that I want to make. Like, get him open and get him on the ball if you're Pyramids FC. Not just, first of all, he's going to get his opportunity to cross the ball in set pieces, because you can't not foul during the match. I don't even know if that's ever happened in football, but no fouls given. So as long as the ball is in the opposition half on a set piece, he's going to be dangerous, number one. But even in open play, if you can get him to put in, let's say, 5 to 10 crosses, I think your chances of winning the match probably jump by 10 to 20%. He's the hottest Pyramids FC player at the moment. He created almost every single major chance in the semifinals, and he had 2 assists, one on the corner kick, and the other one that was like a 50-yard ball to Ramadan Subhi with his first touch of the match that he scored against Orlando Pirates. So finally, defensively, Mohamed Hamdi and Mohamed Shibi, the fullbacks, who I said were so good attacking-wise, they need to be very, very alert when they're defending, especially when they're defending in their own end, because I mentioned one of the tendencies for Mamelodi Sundowns when they were conceding goals in the CAF Champions League this year is usually comes through low crosses. One of the ways they've been scoring goals. So you have the Ronwen Williams direct ball into Ikram Rainers, but more importantly, you have players like Lucas Ribeiro or like Thibaut Mokoena finding some space in withdrawn positions and then usually playing a ball to the back post. And that's where Peter Shalulile has been very, very dangerous. He peels off the center half and finds space between the center half and the fullback. And usually that's where he's been dangerous. So if Shalulile is playing, if they start playing those balls to the second post, the fullbacks need to be constantly communicating with the center halves. They need to be able to also help them cover, So these are Hamdi and Chibi, I think, are going to be crucial defending the ball in the air when they're in their own end. So let's go to a prediction. I see this as being a close game. I think it's either going to be 1-0 to the Mamelodi Sundowns or 1-1. Sundowns have defended very well recently, as I mentioned. I don't expect them to concede easily. I think if they can keep a clean sheet, I think they're going to be African champions because the way Pyramids FC are conceding goals, I think Mamelodi Sundowns are going to score in Cairo. And Pyramids are definitely conceding too much away from home, but even at home. I think the main key, after we've gone over all these, tactical points for Mamelodi Sundowns, is when you're holding, they're going to have most of the possession of the ball. But transition defending is going to be the main thing. Transition defending and defending set pieces. Again, Shibi is going to have these dangerous balls on set pieces. And then transitioning defending, when you see Ibrahim Adel and Mustafa Fatih, they're extremely, extremely dangerous. So I think in terms of them defending, those are the key points. And for them attacking, I really want to see Lucas Ribeiro and Temba Zwane troubling Pyramids FC in the half spaces, finding those pockets in front of the defensive line and making a goal that way. So my final prediction, I think, is going to be 1-0 to Mamelodi Sundowns over Pyramids FC. It'd be rare to keep Pyramids FC to a goalless performance and to secure a clean sheet, but I think that's what's going to happen over here. It's not going to be the most exciting of matches, but it should be a very good chess match. And we'll leave it there for now. So thanks for tuning in again. Excuse me, I'm very sick. I'm coughing, breathing heavy, but excited for this CAF Champions League final match. If you liked this content, please thumbs up, please comment, please share. And we'll be checking in immediately after the CAF Champions League final, the first match in Pretoria. And also we'll be releasing CAF Confederation Cup final preview probably tonight or tomorrow as well. So take care, thanks for watching, and peace.